it goes back that far, you know.
Okay, and what is that sound? So you got a major chord here, A.
Yeah, and
Da, 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 da.
yeah, like well, I was gonna talk about Bill Brunzi, and
Okay.
for me, which a little bit of context, the first album that like gave me a lot of like blues influence that I really remember, um, which for me it was an Eric Clapton album, and it was his acoustic album. And for me, when I hear some of those songs, like he was covering Bill Brunzi songs, he covered a Robert Johnson song on that album, and like you heard all these like sounds that influenced him. And it's funny that some of those, like, it's funny to hear what sound, and he does a very convincing cover of a lot of those older blues tunes, but like those, some of those elements that make the blues feel really good, like he's showing his influence in that Unplugged album. And when I saw that as a young guitarist, like I heard certain sounds like that flat three over a major chord. He would sing, hey, 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 baby, hey. And you hear that last note, that hey, that note's like, oh, it begs to move up a little bit. And that's like that particular sound is, that sound has been a part of the blues ever since the blues has been recorded, which is kind of a neat, like, it's neat to know that it's been there since the beginning.
Absolutely.
I have like, sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So you did some research on this. This is great. Well, do you want to pop your computer and record, and we'll introduce ourselves? We got a group full of people filling up. I'm already recording on my end here, so we can post this later. We'll see how this sync works up.
Oh, I think I need permission from you, maybe, if it wants to record on my side as well. Is that
you?
See a new person in chat?
There you go.
Okay, great. Now I can record things.
Guys, all of y'all can utilize the Zoom group chat box.
Oh yeah. The little chat box down there. If you want to,
if you guys want to ask us any questions or anything, we're just gonna kind of go over some basic blues licks and things we like and influences we have. Aaron's awesome. Aaron did the research from.
Well, I didn't.
The book style research, I love it. I went and listened to some Jimi Hendrix, man.
Well, that's the thing, is that you know, like the blues itself, like it has such an incredible influence that when I think about Hendrix and all the blues influence that he has, I know I have a lot of students that have been younger over the past decade that like they've never even heard Hendrix stuff before, which is kind of like crazy to me, but it's a lot of the, and which is okay, it's fine, but a lot of that comes to his music not being out there. And now I'm gonna not get on a soapbox on how his estate won't let his music be anywhere, but I really think it's about how there's a lot of this great blues influenced rock music, not just Hendrix, but that a lot of younger students just haven't even don't even know about, which is, again, it's fine, but man, it's there's a lot of gold there, you know, especially for a young budding guitarist, for Jimi Hendrix anyway.
Oh, absolutely. Well, to kick us off, I'm Randy. I'm up here at Ovation Music. Yeah, we're getting it done. Playing some blues tonight with Mr. Aaron Keene. How are you doing there, Aaron?
I'm doing great, man. I've been working on some tunes this week, and some of them with a pretty bluesy influence, just for fun. Because, you know, it's we're here to talk about it, and to me, it's a very near and dear thing. I know, like, I was in a blues band in high school, and I was the guy when they, and you know this, and Randy, you know this, it's like, hey, take another solo, and you know, you're the guitarist, and you take another solo with the band. And when you're in my case, you know, when I was like 14, and you're playing all these like blues licks with a band, and they go like, oh, take another solo, it's like a chance for you to play and experiment. But when you're like at the height of a show, like for me, it's I'm gonna use a $10 word here. It's like, it's catharsis. You know, you have a really good blues solo, you get to ride that wave of like where the band follows. It was the thing that attracted me to like Stevie Ray Vaughan and, and Hendrix, and you know, like I have to say, like, most music that I listen to has some touch of the blues.
Even at least that improvisation element.
Yes, that's a big part.
And the flat 3 over the major chord.
Yeah, we can get. I mean, I would happily get technical about blues things. If you go down that route, I would, about what notes make a song sound like the blues.
Yeah. So you take something like, let's see here. Now, instantly, I go, that's blues music. But Eric's sitting there in the corner going, no, that's Black Sabbath.
Well, I mean, which, of course, that influence is there. What were some of the things that you did that made that feel like the blues, though? I mean,
this thing.
That particular riff was the riff I was going to use for what was my favorite blues riff because of
that's
how
mine.
often you hear it,
That's mine right there. That's mine. The bend the 4 up to the 5, and then you play 5-1. Some variation of that, whether you repeat it, you play them as a chord, the Johnny B. Good thing. You do the Jeff Beck thing where you make it a group of 5. I love that one because it's like it sounds faster than you're actually playing it when you put a beat behind it.
Yes,
because it's looking over itself.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing that what's the thing that makes the blues is playing with the rhythm a lot too. And if you have a pattern of 3 notes like that over songs that traditionally feel like in a 4/4 groove, or at least are metrically that way, you get a lot of bluesy things where they'll play the 3 over it, and not just in straight triplets, but really stretch that time. And that's just one more element that feels like the blues,
Okay, so what's your lick? You sat down with a piano today, so nobody can see your piano, but
oh, I could have, I could put the camera there, I really honestly could, but I guess there's a lot. Everyone knows there's certain blues ideas that I don't know. There are too many.
That reminds me of the all blues thing.
And for all those all blues is Miles Davis tune, right? And Miles Davis in the cool jazz era. And that chord progression, if we were okay, now it's turning into a lesson. I'm not going to turn it all into a lesson.
That's okay.
But that feeling of going from the 1 chord to the 4 chord over 1 to and this is the chord that I feel like if you studied music doesn't get a name enough, but it's the 5 minor over 1. That is such a blues chord that very often when you read it, a lot of people they don't give it a good name. It's the 5 minor over 1, or they call it something different. It's
flat
it's a
7.
Lot. No, think of the first chord in Stormy Monday by the Allman Brothers, and you have that particular sound. Someone might associate that with Ray Charles a lot. That particular chord, people think of the blues, they go, "What's a blues chord?" Well, it's a 7th chord, and while that is true. Well, it is true in a lot of genres of blues. That particular chord, the 5 minor, if you over 1, that chord you don't it's not always labeled very well, but that chord shows up everywhere. So that's a 6.
It doesn't even sound minor. It doesn't even sound minor to me. I've always called it flat 7/9.
Well, what's nifty about this
theory lesson.
Right, yeah, theory lesson. But the all blues and in that song too, what's cool about this chord in the blues, that's which we're doing Story Monday, and then when you go up, it has this sound. Whenever you hear this sound and you go, oh man, that feels bluesy, and you might hear over this particular type of chord, you go oh man, that sounds so bluesy. What is that chord? Well, that 5 minor over 1, if you're talking theory, or all you really got to know is when you hear the sound, it is not major, it's not minor. It's something that is intentionally ambiguous in terms of how you think about music theory. There's no third present within that chord. And that's just another one of the things that when you take a chord like that and it feels bluesy, the ambiguity of it allows you to use lots of different ideas, some that sound happy, some that sound sad, some that sound major and minor. But that chord, this one here, you could play a minor scale over it. You could also play a major one. And you can hear that it's like, oh, okay, those two flavors of the blues, that chord isn't picky. That chord lets you play.
Yeah, if you listen to a lot of players, you can go, oh, I hear players that play like that. Like you play the major, I think guitar, I think of like Dickie Betts. He always runs for that major scale, it seems like. Not always, but he's more particular to it than other guys like B.B. King, who's a little more particular to the minor scale.
And then, you know what, that brings, like, I can't wait to talk. I was going to just talk about, I mean, obviously pentatonic is the word we haven't said yet.
Oh, yeah. We've kind of avoided the two things that are probably the blues, which is the pentatonic and the just the standard shuffle pattern.
Yeah.
The no third.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother. Oh, I can't wait to talk about before because I'm gonna I'll never shut up once we start talking about this. I just want to call attention to things in the chat box. I just wanted to say hi to people.
Oh yeah.
This is me saying hi to Galen and. Okay. So Zach, I waved at you. I see that you put something in the chat box there. How's it going, man? You said, oh yeah, if you were close to your Les Paul, but I guess you're away from it.
Looks like you're at the park, man.
I was about to say, I don't know where you plug in out there. Unless you got a generator going.
Hey, I'm okay with plugging into a generator. I'm running through, I'm actually running through Pro Tools right now. You're actually hearing, this is the PRS V9 from Waves, the Blue Sierra amp, with a ODR1, which is a transparent overdrive. Yeah, now, if you really want to get into modern blues discussions, we can have this a whole like 10 billion years of transparent overdrives versus colored overdrives. You know, but essentially, this is the amp sound, and with a little overdrive, a little gritty coming through the computer system, but it gets the
history. The history of the gear of getting the right blues tone is a whole. God, that's
yeah. Speaking of, I mean, I have a pretty crystal clear favorite on that for blues guitar tone, and for me, that is Robin Ford playing the ES. I think it's a 135 that he plays, or a 330. It's a smaller one.
Yeah.
It's not a 335. It's a smaller version of that archtop guitar through a Dumble Super Overdrive 100. Cranked. Cranked.
Yeah, you want to get that sound.
Dunlop fuzz face in front of it.
There you go. And it is a P90 kind of pickup style.
No. It's a patent PAF.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So like earlier version.
Early PAF 60.
Yeah.
He probably bought. I think he bought his in the 60s.
Yeah.
And when he was a kid.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I think when I think about some of my favorite blues tones, we think like, and I won't talk about Eric Clapton like forever, but I do want to like, when you think of like early Eric Clapton, like Cream era, like his solo tone is very dark sounding and almost sounds kind of like, you know, especially it kind of would sound a little bit like viola-y kind of. That particular
especially on the leads.
Exactly. I'm talking about lead tone specifically. Yeah. Some of my favorite like blues tones, like God, I love especially that sound. Yeah.
I mean, I can just do that. You know instantly what song I'm playing. I don't even have to play anything else in the song.
Yeah, I know. I was like, did we talk about Sunshine of Your Love? You know, like, or just about specific riffs?
But, again, that's a major chord. And then he walks down a minor scale.
Exactly. You know? Yeah, a minor pentatonic. So let's talk. I don't know how many people in chat, which feel free to say you know what a pentatonic scale is, or if you are hip to a pentatonic scale. We're going to talk a little bit music theory for just a little, and we're talking about blues. Let's talk the theory. But in the pentatonic scale world, I know like a lot of the forms of the blues have a pentatonic scale in it.
Yes.
And before, I think everyone knows there's major pentatonic, there's minor pentatonic, like if you're studying the pentatonic scales, and it's like if you're in a major keyed song, like what do you choose? It's in the blues, right, Randy, you would say like a lot of blues would be like using a major chord or a major key sound, like if you're in a major key and still using a minor blues or a minor pentatonic solo or minor pentatonic scale over it.
Yeah. So if you got an organ sound there?
Yeah, the organ sound. This is more of an EP sound.
An EP sound, that's fine. Just like hold an A major, dominant 7 chord.
Sure. Exactly. So when you hear that sound, those two things.
That's that minor.
Exactly, that minor. And just like in the very early blues recordings where you would hear a major keyed song and you would hear hey, and you hear that like within that happier major key sound, that sound like that. Well, when you smash them together like that,
you get Godsmack. So Godsmack's a blues band.
I wouldn't. That's a little bit of a stretch, but
okay, yeah. Back to your minor, yeah.
So like early guitarists will find out, like when it comes time to improvise, they go, and early pianists too, they go, well, what kind of scale do I use to play a blues solo? And when they're in a minor key, you're like, oh, use a minor pentatonic. And when they're in a major key, you're like, use a minor pentatonic. it's like, wait, or use a major pentatonic, right? But when do you make that choice, and why do you make that choice, and why do both choices work? And
it progresses as you get better.
Yeah, that you can mix and match.
Fundamentally, I think people do have their tendencies, though. I will go for the minor scale.
Yeah,
9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
And when I use the major scale, I always use it with more of a melodic classical sense.
Okay.
Like a Mixolydian kind of thing. I won't use that major blues scale. To me is really, I find it really awkward. And so you play that A7 chord and you get that. I find that awkward to my ear, personally.
Okay.
Well, so I drift towards more of a. And I'll kind of bend in and out of both of them, but never really be in the major one and not think in the major one.
Right. There was a song that Stevie Ray Vaughan had that was really big for him as an instrumental. Lenny was the name of it.
Yeah. Is that the E major 7 one?
Yeah. Yeah, and then it goes to like an A6 chord. Yeah. So that song, that was, and feel free to look that up. I highly recommend that as an instrumental if you're wanting to check out blues for this very reason. He has a great version called Live at El Macambo, which was a club that he played at, and they had a great recording of that. But to me, Stevie Ray Vaughan, on some of his songs, you're in a blues song, but it's in a happier major key sound. Generally, like the chords are doing that sound. The way he would do it is if he's over that first part, you would hear him play like a major pentatonic sound that kind of like warmed you up. And then when it came time to like deliver the goods, he would just boom, throw in that minor pentatonic, and that change would immediately make you feel like either stank face or like draw a lot out of you. Like and like if I have and I'll switch back to piano just because it's a little clearer. But if I have like major key sounding things, like those particular sounds, and then over that, and then I choose to go into you get that feeling of, you go like, oh my god, like that has like you set it up, you set a precedent, and in the song Lenny, he tricks you because he's like, oh, this song is very chill, it's moving nicely. And then he goes, and it's like it goes into like the minor key thing, and it is so good. It is like it just.
In that tune somewhere, he uses one of my favorite licks. I think he does it in that song where he separates the one and the. I don't know why. I'm not very good at that one. I never got good at it, but I love the sound of it. Because it's the 4 to sharp 4 with the 1 holding underneath it.
Exactly, yeah.
Which goes back to my Black Sabbath.
You know that like if there are tones that like in a scale you alter to make it feel like the blues. The first of which we were talking about is the flat 3, and then that example is like the flat 5 or sharp 4, and then a flat 7. There are certain tones of a major scale that when you flatten them, they technically give you more of a blues sound, just in general. And when you hear like a blues instrumentalist or a singer, you'll hear them sing those particular notes. It can very immediately make you go, "This feels like the blues," and for sure that little one that like the that little like crunching against it.
Yeah, it's that altered 5 chord thing.
Yeah, that being a huge influence. So like the 3rd, the 5th, the 7th, if you take those notes of a major scale and you flatten them, you will get something bluesy out of it. That's pretty sure, right? But like,
yeah, you're pretty much blues at that point. I mean, if I play a major scale with just a flat 3, what did you say, 3, 5, and 7?
Yeah.
If I start with the root and play that in a arpeggio, you kind of get this diminished chord thing. That's that diminished chord underneath causes the 5 chord to be major in a way that's
right. It's definitely like just having the elements alone don't necessarily always make it bluesy, but it can still give you that feeling, it still has that, but yeah, and that would be a flat 5, and diminished chords are everywhere in the blues, right? They just serve a different like,
yeah, they're just always on top of a different root.
Exactly, right, because
so it's never this. You don't hear this in blues. The slap fully diminished straight up your face Bach classical style, but
right.
You get like, so if you get this E diminished chord, it's really going to be like a C flat 5.
Sure.
Flat 9 kind of thing.
Right. So like so like the rabbit hole of like harmony influences by the blues, there are certain chord types, there are certain eras that go, oh, this is what, and I just wanted to say this briefly or set this up in that like different eras of the blues have different types of blues chords. And I would say if someone says, oh, 7th chords are the blues, like if you want to play the blues, you play a 7th chord. That is true in certain eras. Like it's a very blanket statement to say it that way, or to say that a blues is 1, 4, and 5 and that's it in terms of like chord progressions. But it certainly runs deeper than that, and even very early blues will deviate from that. I was looking at Malted Milk by Robert Johnson, right? And
yeah, that's like just an open D5 chord, isn't it? Or G.
Well,
it's not even like tuned to a chord.
Well, in the Robert Johnson example, which, hey, I have an acoustic here, so I guess I could be that guy too.
Give us some Robert Johnson.
See, Eric. So some of the Robert Johnson stuff, like there are 7th chords in it, and you might hear him do like higher versions of it, and most of the time it does stick with 7ths. I keep drinking malted milk, trying to drive these old blues away. So you can hear like those are certainly. And he has little. So you'll hear these really old school like sounds. There's a lot going on, even in that little sound bite there that I'm playing. When you hear this, that sound right there is already going major, minor, and then back to major. It already has some of these pivot ideas of things that sound happy, but have certain notes that feel bluesy. And Robert Johnson, that's 1920.
Yeah, early 20. I don't know
maybe
song,
maybe
but maybe
even
before that. I mean, he may have wrote it in 1910 and just didn't record it till 1920.
Well, right, and to my point, instead of it just being 1, 4, and 5, which it does start there, I keep drinking malted milk, trying to drive these old blues away. Those are 1 and 4 chord. And you're just as welcome to my loving. Something, something. Actually, can't remember the words for that. But then.
Yeah, the diminished chord there. A little diminished rundown. Nice.
Right. Well, it's actually a 7th chord over a B7, a B flat 7, and then an A7. So even in that little turnaround part of the blues, there's more information than just saying, oh, it's just the 5 chord. And if you're a student of guitar or the blues, you are tempted to just go, oh, it's the 1 chord, it's the 4 chord, it's the 5 chord. And while it's true that that makes up a lot of the songs, if you dig even just into some of the turnarounds that are in it, or the last few chords before the progression loops back around, you will hear sometimes some really interesting stuff. And even in that one, it's just 7th chords down, and it's at least 2 more than what you were told. But there's certainly more, even in his little riffs, the little, which I would call that the malted milk riff, because that's one of the, he really coined that little moment. That particular sound is it sounds like an era.
It sounds like blues.
It sounds like blues.
It sounds like blues, and then all the slide guys took that same idea.
Absolutely.
And just ran with it in the dirt, and by 1925 it was used up, and nobody quit using it.
I mean, boy, actually I forgot my slide. It's somewhere in this house, but man, we could talk a little bit of slide blues too. But that
I'm not going to do that to you.
Oh, okay.
I'm playing a Stratocaster with humbuckers that has 8s in it, and the strings are on the fretboard. Like if I play without the amp, you can hear the buzzing of the frets.
Yes.
This guitar is set up 100% for just straight in your face.
Right.
Which has nothing to do with the blues, but it does now. That idea of how fast can I play has really become an important part of modern blues playing somehow. Though
Sometimes,
it didn't start out that way.
No. I mean, how fast? Yeah, well, it was.
And I don't think the guys that are successful are doing that all the time.
So but I'm not gonna hate on speed. Speed is great. I'm an Eric Johnson fan. Obviously, I like pentatonics that go fast. There are a lot of pushing the limits of speed in blues. Certainly, I'd say Joe Bonamassa is probably one of the best examples of somebody that has the chops to go
outside of blues, but
outside of blues and is very. I mean, it doesn't mean it's not like a million notes a second, at a show of his. Like, he waits for the right moments. Do it. It's all about when you choose to do that. But yeah, blues has certainly evolved speed wise. I mean, honestly though, Hendrix was pretty fast too.
Yeah,
especially for his day.
Now Hendrix, and as good and as fast as he was, and as clean as he was, for me, the 2-note thing, the chord playing, it's not double stops. It's not like the country guys where they're doing this kind of thing. Hendrix is like strumming. I can't tell. It's hard to describe because it's so different than the way anybody else do it. But these crazy. And he's always playing like 4 notes, 3 notes, 2 notes with hammer-ons in between them.
Yes.
And it's really outside of what everybody else does. Eric Johnson's probably the best I've seen cop that. I mean, but I've never really seen anybody else do it. Stevie Ray Vaughan a little bit.
A popular John Mayer does it plenty in terms of like of a popular recording artist currently. And if we're all over the place. Robert Johnson, then let's talk Hendrix. But I'm down to talk Hendrix. So
well, Hendrix is the middle ground. Hendrix is the transition.
He's one of the biggest ones. Yeah. For sure. Especially in in rock. But in terms of like chops that Hendrix had, in terms of how he played the guitar, everyone like heard Stevie Ray Vaughan and went, now that's a guy who can cover a Hendrix song convincingly. And I would say other popular guitarists that really do the Hendrix style well, obviously Prince, although he's very pop, like, or not very pop, but like, you know what I mean? You don't think.
Yeah, he's R&B, yeah.
Yeah, but you don't necessarily think that. But as a guitar player, he's incredible. And he had plenty to say on the guitar that was influenced by Hendrix. Of course, he had his own vocabulary there too, but and Stevie Ray Vaughan and I would say John Mayer really, if you ever watch it, okay, not that I'm always watching Rock and Roll Hall of Fame acceptance speeches, but if you watch John Mayer's Rock and Roll acceptance speech for Stevie Ray Vaughan, like after his passing, that will move you to pick up your guitar and play again. Because you will really see that to John, and it wasn't just for the guitar. Obviously, Stevie Ray Vaughan as a vocalist is someone that John Mayer really was inspired by too.
Yes.
You can hear it in like the softer kind of stuff that's in there. That obviously SRV wailed too, but in his softer sounds, you would hear a lot of what John Mayer has added to what he does too. But if a lot of students that I know that have started learning the guitar in the past like 10 or 15 years, their guitar hero that carries that torch has been John Mayer for a while, in terms of popular recording artists that are really well known. And personally, I gotta say, man, you know, like I grew up on Hendrix and then heard John Mayer and certain stuff. And while I don't know his catalog super well, I think what he does on the guitar and I mean what he does in general is great, but his guitar playing is very, very Hendrix to SRV to John Mayer. Like I feel
that transition.
Yes, yeah, you know, like sign of the times, you know, popular artists reflect the sounds and the type of songwriting what they're in, but the guitar playing is unmistakable. When I hear John Mayer, I hear Stevie Ray Vaughan and I hear a little bit of Hendrix, like at least like in the lead blues playing.
And then I guess on the other side of that, I don't know who the 50s, 60s guy would be, but you got the Dwayne Allman to Derek Trucks thing.
Sure.
Which I don't know where their influence comes from. Howlin' Wolf played a lot of slide, though I'm not super familiar with it. With the Hendrix and stuff, I know that the guy that sounds like that before Hendrix is kind of a lot of Buddy Guy.
Yes.
And that rock and roll thing, and that sort of took two directions. Because Jeff Beck did not do the same thing that Jimi Hendrix did with it.
Right.
At all. And Gary Moore didn't do the same thing that Jimi Hendrix did with it.
No. Oh my God. Can I wait? I have a, okay.
You got Gary Moore licks?
I don't have enough Gary. I don't have much Gary Moore in my head, but
yeah, well,
you got some. Feel free to share.
Well, Gary Moore gets into we were talking about this basic harmony. He gets out of the basic harmony, and I think that's important to talk about at some point in the blues. Is that the idea of this 1, 4, 5, 1 thing that happens with most blues.
Yeah,
is like Gary Moore gets into this 1 flat 7 4 1 kind of stuff, or the 1 minor flat 6 5, because you get that 9 in the scale now. So we were talking about the scale earlier, and we got this pentatonic. We added this sharp 4, and then we get Gary Moore and guys like that, Jeff Beck, and they add this 9. And I always found that's real attractive to my ear. Anything that with them, and again, I go back to the minors. Hendrix, as much minor as he played, he sounds pretty major in a lot of stuff.
Well,
and he kind of does both. He kind of does everything, actually.
Yeah,
when you're trying to analyze his catalog, you're like, okay, I like this stuff. This stuff sounds major for me, and
there's
this stuff sounds like he took too much drugs.
There's a great song. This is me being deep cuts, Hendrix deep cuts. I just want to throw out there. Everyone knows he played the Star Spangled Banner at Woodstock, and that was like a really big, well-known thing, which is true. And at the end of the very last song he played in his set of Woodstock is "Hey Joe," which was a popular hit for him. It was great tune of like, it has some really interesting changes.
I'm not going to play too much.
Quick to the draw.
YouTube. I don't need it to get kicked off later.
Right. There is an underappreciated song before that called Villanova Junction. And it was an instrumental that I can't find anywhere else other than that one. But if you listen to Hendrix's playing there, he's doing something that is quoting a style made very famous by a great blues-influenced guitarist named Wes Montgomery. And Wes Montgomery is definitely known more in the jazz world, but boy, we're talking about blues. Let me hook up my guitar and I'll play some.
Yeah. I mean, Wes Montgomery's totally blues.
I'm not gonna be able to hear you for a second.
Okay.
But let me hook up my guitar. You know what? I will talk the Wes Montgomery thing because it is kind of cool. I'll show it really quick. I don't know if you can hear this, but this particular riff, that was like the very first riff that he did. Kind of a simple thing, but you'll hear he's playing octaves, and he's playing them at the same time. Like that particular sound, which the like all these particular, like you can hear there's two notes being played at once in octaves pretty quick. That's another thing that like Wes Montgomery, like in the late 50s, kind of developed that style, and a lot of blues rock guitarists like heard that and like they snuck it into their playing.
Okay.
And Hendrix has a solo at the end of like he plays that thing that I just played just then. That's like the opening line from Villanova Junction that he plays. And then at the end of the song, you'll hear he takes a solo with a lot of those same sounds. These little like where I'm playing blues patterns, but I'm playing a low note and a high octave of a note at the same time. That particular style is really quoted by, or like Wes Montgomery was one of the guitarists that kind of like made that a really like
popular thing.
I mean, he was kind of the guy that just did it. And then you'll hear Eric Johnson, if you're talking about like guitar head stuff, he has a song called East West. And so it's to Wes Montgomery, the guitarist. So
East West. He also does it in
yeah.
Well, man, that's all I remember of it. I don't know why I remember that.
It's a great.
Years ago. What is that? Manhattan or Zap?
Yeah. I think that's Manhattan. I can't remember if that's off of Avia Musicum or not.
The licks on it are so hard. That's about as far as I got with the song. As a professional guitar player, you know, learning some Hendrix stuff, there is a lot of nuance to it, and to get it right, you have to get the nuance. Right. Eric Johnson's impossible. You can't even get to the nuance. So hard, and it's so accurate. So that's kind of a unique thing.
I saw an interview recently with Eric Johnson, if we're just going to talk Eric Johnson, and he was talking about the development of a lot of his stuff, and he said, no matter how technical things got, he's like, he said he always loved the feeling of the blues in his playing. Yes. That he always wanted that to be a part of his guitar playing. So even when he goes like blistering speeds, you still hear like the attack of it wouldn't be, and I'm not going to really like do an Eric Johnson riff. I'm not going to claim to do anything like that. But when he does certain things, like his attack to it, he'll still have an attack that is very hard. Like you'll hear riffs that like he hits those strings with a little bit more conviction than somebody that isn't influenced by the blues would.
Absolutely.
You know, so like even in his faster playing, those elements are still there. It's just, boy, he's a legend. He's a living legend of guitar playing in general. But he too, on the subject of the blues, he will cop to that being very, very important. And I might embarrass myself because I like Eric Johnson so much, and I just want to share this. But what is your favorite blues riff? If there is a favorite blues riff that I would say I have that is inspired by Eric Johnson, it has to do with that scale we were talking about earlier, the pentatonic. And he was a guy that really would take that scale and get every single dollar he could out of it in the coolest ways. And he would do a particular thing where he would do a sequence of 5 notes. And he would loop that sequence of 5 with another sequence of 5 like this. And you'll hear there's very fast, clean thing that he does that it's like, whoa, it's blisteringly fast, but he would do these sequences of 5s that just cascade and move through. And a lot of times it is that same blues pentatonic scale just cranked up to, cranked up to 11. Okay, I said it. But yeah, seriously, cranked up to 11. And I love it.
Well, Hendrix is, and when Eric Johnson talks, he always talks a lot about Hendrix.
Yeah,
always. We're always passing through Hendrix.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I don't know many guys who didn't like. Hendrix kind of is the center ground for guitar players that learned guitar after 1968.
Yes,
if you started learning guitar in that era, you were listening to Hendrix. Then obviously you had to. You couldn't avoid it.
Yeah, and
now how do you avoid it? Because everybody learned from Hendrix.
Everybody in our age group, like.
Yeah, but even the guys from the 70s, the guys from Judas Priest talk about listening to Hendrix, and
yeah,
the guitar players from Motley Crue talk about the way he dressed and the way he played licks, and they wanted to incorporate both of that and the flashiness of the attitude and.
I can tell you when I first started playing anything, the very first 2 songs I learned to play were by Nirvana. And then the next 20 songs I learned how to play were by Hendrix. I went to, God, I'm going to show my age. Here we go. I went to a media play. Do you know what a media play is?
Yeah.
I went to
Connor and KK. I'm sorry, guys. Y'all
I'm sorry. I went to a place called Media Play, which it's almost like saying Blockbuster now. But I went to Media Play and I bought my very first guitar book of songs to learn. And it was Jimi Hendrix Signature Licks. And in this book, it had some songs, Hey Joe. And I remember this is the very first solo I remember learning how to play. And I spent an entire summer with my guitar, and this is all I came out knowing was just and like I spent
the whole summer learning just that part.
Yeah, and it didn't sound like I knew it like just then, like sounds like I know it. It didn't sound like I knew it, but boy, I knew it. And I spent forever on that song and the song Little Wing. I learned those 2 songs over that first summer, And after that, I couldn't get enough Hendrix, and it became an obsession. And
I think Lumping took 10 years before I was like, okay, I feel like I have a handle on not just the song, but the attitude of it. And I gave up on trying to make it sound like Hendrix. Normally, I'm the kind of person who goes, try to sound exactly like the person because you can't do it.
Right.
Hendrix is one of the guitar players I just like, I'm not going to sound like Hendrix. I gave up on trying years ago. Maybe I shouldn't give up that fast. Well, it's bad inspiration, but it's too hard for me to sound exactly like him. So, you know, I tried and I spent 10, 15 years trying to sound like Jimi Hendrix.
I mean, it's amazing what he did in such a short time, you know, like what he was influenced by. And we don't have to stay on Hendrix forever, but I do have to tell this one story really, really quick. Oh my God. There was an exhibit at the Country Music Hall of Fame, and a lot of people don't know, but Hendrix played in Nashville before he was big. Like he was playing like with bands like Little Richard and like early like rock and roll kind of bands before he had his start. And I went to the Country Music Hall of Fame because they had an exhibit called The Magic of Hendrix. And Hendrix and his magic guitar or something, and it was a panel, and it had Buddy Miles. No, it had Billy Cox, who was his bass player after the experience. He played with Band of Gypsies, and he had a panel of Billy Cox was there and like 6 other guys that played with Jimi Hendrix in Nashville in the time before he moved overseas, and then the producer of the Animals found him and helped jumpstart his career. And I remember it just killed me because these guys were like, yeah, you know, Hendrix, he could kind of play. He'd get up there. He's kind of nervous. He kind of, you know, he didn't really, you know, these are the other blues guitarists of his day saying like that. And that doesn't mean it's not true. He may have been, but they were saying these kinds of things. And I'll never forget, there was this guy, and he was a much older man. He was very, you know, he was just a much older man. And he had long since not had any teeth. And he, without like Monty Python levels of dry humor, he looked and said, he said, I was the one that taught Hendrix how to play with his teeth. And he was like upset that Hendrix took his bit, but the dude could not see the irony that he had no teeth anymore. And I laughed so hard. Oh my God. It was so
mean, man. So mean. Oh.
But anyway, all that to say is Hendrix did play like in Nashville for a bit, right? And
did anybody else play with their teeth at that time?
I'm
sure somebody had to, because Howlin' Wolf was doing it and Buddy Guy was doing it.
Yeah, surely, you know, it was just
not a new trick whatsoever.
I know, but God, you know what I mean? Sorry, I got on a little tangent, but
that's great though. Yeah, I wonder how Billy Cox felt with those guys, because Nashville, Hendrix would have been what, 19, 20, 21.
Yeah.
I mean, he would have been a young kid in a town that had almost no music scene. It was just getting started. I mean, this is Brenda Lee's a little kid in her parents' studio, and Willie, there's some hits in the studio world, but there's no Broadway.
Well, yeah. I mean, we might have to get into the history of country music at that point, but as far as guys playing the blues circuit in that era, sure there were plenty, I'm sure, but you know, it certainly wasn't known for.
Yeah. It was just kind of a travel through town. You play a show.
So okay, that's the Hendrix Power Hour.
Yeah, Hendrix is it's hard to avoid Hendrix when you want to discuss blues. Though Clapton was probably the guy that I learned more of. Ironically.
I mean,
it depends on which period though. Like when I first started, it was all Hendrix and Clapton, and then I drifted into Sabbath, and that became my center.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of blues riffs to be had in Sabbath as well, you know, like you know what I mean? Like, it certainly made it.
My Sabbath solo that I just played at the start of this an hour ago.
Right. So, I guess, okay, I don't know how long we're going today. I do have...
Yeah, you're fine, man. I think this is excellent. We need to continue this discussion. Why don't you guys shoot us an email over at Ovation, ovmsgalton@gmail.com, and tell us some subject matters you guys like to hear us discuss.
I guess we should also say, what is our favorite blues lick? You already stole the little,
yeah,
little world. I don't get to use that one now, I guess.
I mean, we can have the same favorite lick. I don't know. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that idea though, and all the variations that it leads itself to, that is my favorite blues lick thing.
Yes. And
it's hard
for those yeah, it's hard to avoid that one for sure. It was in I think the first time God, another Hendrix tune, you know, a song called Manic Depression. And it opens with
thanks, Don. So we're just gonna run this like a podcast, and sure, we'll strip these off our computer and get them on YouTube with some slight edits.
Sure.
Everybody have a wonderful night. Stay safe. If you're watching this on YouTube later, it is April 24th, and we're in the middle of quarantine for the entire world.
Yes.
So this is a good thing to note. That is the year 2020. So if you're aliens listening in 3056, sorry. Hopefully we're still there.
This is taking a dark, heavy turn.
Have a good one, man.
All right, see ya.
Thank you, guys.